All right, and we're live on Money FM's Behind the Markets Futuristic Friday, Vernon. It's Futuristic Friday. What are you looking forward to in your future today, Vernon? Give us a shout. What is it?
Well, now that you've asked, so technically, I'm looking at first of all financial freedom. As they say, money is never enough, so I'm always looking for more money, and essentially, I want to have the power to at least I don't want to be too rich. I don't want to be, too much, but I want to be comfortable. I think when you're too rich, you're in everyone's eyes and ears and on everyone's lips. So I don't want that kind of attention. I just want to be comfortable, be able to get what I want to get, and not stress about, rentals, bills, not being able to meet certain needs. And I just want to say I'm reaching 40, I'm not financially strained or stressed about how I'm going to pay my next rentals, how am I going to get to, to have my meals on my table. That's really my focus, especially.
Okay, well, that's a good way to think about things, Vernon. That's a very good way to think about things, and a very good way to capture your thoughts. So, I will give you this: the three levels of wealth you all need to attain to is one, financial. There's financial security, financial self-reliance, and financial self-determination. Those are the three categories of a wealthy person. One who is secure, then the other is self-reliant, and the other is finally self-determined. Secure means nothing can take you down. Self reliant means you're not dependent on anything. Self determined means you can go wherever you want and do whatever you want without having to consult or need the strength of somebody else to do it for you. That, Vernon, is the definition that everybody should be looking at around their life of what wealthy is. And it differs from nation to nation due to the economic costs and the circumstances. But that is generally what you're looking for. One of the toughest things I think that hits a lot of people is that our definition of wealth is mostly circled around how much we can spend, less than how much we make. That's usually what we where we unfortunately define ourselves wrong when it comes to wealth, and that's why we often suffer with that definition of wealth, and we often suffer at the hands of poverty, stagnation, inflation, those kind of things, because all our definitions are circled around our spending habits. And that's the danger of it. But Vernon, that is life. That is part of a culture that we've either adopted and decided to keep. But today, Vernon, we're going to address a few things. One, we're going to go through the market roundup, obviously for the week. That's general data. Two, we're going to go through. We're now going to go through that succession planning, that business succession planning, because that is a futuristic thing. If you're running a business, you really want to know how to have a good success, and how to pick a number two. And three, Vernon, I'm going to give you my futuristic thought. Okay, I'm going to give you my futuristic trend, sorry, which has got to do with poverty and youth, and where the direction of youth specifically is going in terms of our labor and economic activity. And I'm going to tell you up front, Vernon, numbers ain't pretty. It ain't pretty. But that is simply because as a generation, we decided that we wanted things fast. And two, things have not worked out as easy for us. And because of that, we are now in the middle of trying to battle our way back up. This is where the fight for our generation, the fight for the soul of this country is coming from. But then let us get down to the first pieces of the pie today, and that is the market. That is today's market roundup. In today's market roundup, we are seeing that the kwacha has continued on its 112th consecutive day of currency loss. You know, a number of people don't even know that the currency has lost. They just know it's lost value, but they don't know that it's 112 consecutive days. Maybe the people who listen to the show are the ones who will know that. Simply because because they actually tuned in, or the people who catch on to data, yes, they're the ones who will know that. But unfortunately, we are on our 112th day of kwacha loss of value. We have seen that the US dollar has lost. The US dollar has gained about 12.3%. Sorry, just let me get that updated number. 13.4%. No, not 12.3, 13.4% year to date. Yesterday it had a 0.44% movement as well. So you're already seeing that these day-to-day movements that are happening in the kwacha are very shocking to the system, and they're actually creating more and more inflation to the system. Still, our bond markets are trying to recover from the sell-off that happened yesterday, and we did see that the rand held strong, but the bond markets are trying to recover from the sell-off of yesterday. We are seeing, Vernon, as well, that copper is up. Copper went down again by 0.52959 because of the risks in the banking system, and the fact that JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs had actually increased their probability of a recession in the next 12 months. So the probability of the U.S. slipping into a recession over the next 12 months was picked up by these major banks already, and it's gone from 25% to 35%. Not drastically, but it is strong. And we can feel it. And what you see in a recession, the good thing with Zambia is we're not going to be hit too badly by a recession because a lot of our foreign investors have left. We're not taking on too much debt already. We're struggling in trade anyway, as it is. Our mining sector is already limping. So we're already at the bottom. So everyone's just going to join us if a recession happens. That's really what's going to happen. They're just going to join us more than anything. But yes, there will be obviously slowdowns in trade, looking for new markets. Those things will slow down as well. We are seeing that oil also is down to 74, one of the lowest areas it's been for some time. Oil is down 13.8%, 13.86% in dollars, but unfortunately, we're still at risk of seeing a 13-way movement upwards in oil prices. But the pump price expected upward adjustment is getting lower and lower. That is good. That's at least good and decent for us. Gold still picking up in strength. Gold is still up from yesterday, still 19.22, and obviously up in dollars. So gold in Kwacha is almost at 20% year to date, 19.36% year to date. If you've been holding gold in your portfolio, you're benefiting from it. But you're also seeing Ether up 56.56, and you're also seeing Bitcoin up 69.25. So these are the movements we're seeing in the crypto space as well. So your wealth assets are looking like this: 4.49% bonds upwards. The stock market has just managed to cross back upwards, is just struggling to cross back into positive territory year to date. Remember that it did take a big knock at the beginning of the year. There was some selling off that was happening. While yesterday there was a little bit of a trying to buy up with a slight movement in Zamefa shares, which moved up 1.7%. But the stock market is still 0.16% down year to date. Because you also did see Puma Energy unfortunately move down by 0.56% yesterday as one of the losers on the market, therefore pushing down the market by 0.01%. So we are seeing that unfortunately our stock market is struggling to kind of break through that equilibrium point year to date. But over the last 4 weeks, we have seen that as data is starting to come out, the earnings reports are starting to improve. I am going through my earnings data to get you the mid-season report, but we are seeing that year to date, yesterday we saw 0.01% down from the market, but it's up 1.37% on the week and 1.74% on the month, but still down 0.16% year to date. So this has been a tough quarter for the stock market when it usually is a strong quarter because of earnings and usually dividend announcements, but mixed results in some areas and mixed outlooks. That's what where the stress is coming from. Mixed outlooks are still concerning things. Let's take a look quickly, Vernon, at the global markets before I kind of give you a thought on what is happening on the global markets that is bigger than anything. Now, some of the major news that we're seeing, especially yesterday, the biggest piece of news that was dominating the market reads had to do with Credit Suisse getting a $54 billion lifeline from the Central Bank of Switzerland. And that is a signal that some of the big banks, you see, it's not just Silicon Valley Bank, Signature Bank, these crypto-friendly banks. It's some of these bigger banks where there have been systemic issues. Credit Suisse has had problems continuously. Yes, the stock price bounced back; it recovered because of the $54 billion lifeline. Because people are thinking maybe if things go wrong, there'll be bailouts. That's the only reason why people are comfortable with the banking sector. But underneath it, there's danger. Now, I'm going to just quickly go through these things before I have a conversation with you, Vernon, about the future of the global markets based on something we call zombie companies. That is not a movie, people. It's an actual terminology in economics. I'm going to take you through what that actually means. Yesterday, we saw the Italian inflation decline to 9.1%, the lowest in 5 months. And we saw, thanks to a strong dollar, imported inflation is also slowing down in America. The ECB raised rates yesterday by 50 basis points because they were comfortable enough with the Credit Suisse rescue plan. And Spanish yield curve is starting to steepen again. While we saw, even in the crypto space, USD Circle, the second biggest stable coin in crypto, saw $3.8 billion worth of redemptions and money moving out of the stable coin market. We did see yesterday as well that U.S. industrial housing, the U.S. housing market also showed growth across the board, with the Philadelphia Manufacturing Index showing the sharpest decline since lockdowns kicked in. Jobless claims in America have dropped back below 200,000, and continuous claims also dropped back below 1.7 million, showing that the labor market is still tightening. While I said Goldman Sachs is showing that its recession readings are up at 35%. But the biggest risk to the system, Vernon, is something called zombie companies. Now, what is this? Sounds like a Resident Evil movie. Sounds like some video game turned into a movie. Well, this, Vernon, I'm going to share you quickly, is an explanation on what this thing of zombie companies is and why it's of importance to you here in Zambia and what it might do to you if you're not paying attention, especially when you're seeing top banks like Credit Suisse starting to crack, okay, and what that actually means.
In the US that haven't produced enough profit to service. There are more than 900 companies in the US that haven't produced enough profit to service their debt for 3 straight years. That list includes some big names: Boeing, Uber, and Workday. These companies have a total market cap of more than $1.3 trillion and employ around 1.5 million people. Some economists call these companies zombies because they could just keep borrowing money as long as their valuation stayed high and interest rates stayed low.
Do you see the end of the zombie companies? They're going to be forced out over the next cycle.
Absolutely.
Yeah, to me, it's going to be stunning.
Ripe in the ground for hordes of zombie companies. These walking dead of the business world are affecting or could affect the US and Europe. Investors are plonking money in zombie companies. The number of zombie companies in the US has risen over the years to almost 20% of all listed companies this year. Compare that to 5% in 2008. Germany alone, the Eurozone's biggest economy, zombie companies were almost unheard of in 1990, but they steadily rose to comprise 7.5% of all listed firms in 2008 during the global financial crisis, and that number has crept up, has doubled to 15% now. In France as well, zombie companies started popping up from the early 1990s to make up 17% of all listed firms this year.
Okay, so that is a quick explanation of a few news articles that I managed to pick out for you people, because that is the danger that you're facing. Silicon Valley Bank was just an idiosyncratic situation of people who took too much duration risk on bonds. They held bonds that were too long dated, and then the economic situation changed too quickly. You see, the two biggest risks for holding bonds are interest rates and inflation. So what you want things that can adjust to those things pretty fast. So when you're holding bonds that are 10-year, 15-year, you're exposing yourself to changes in interest rates and inflation, which change the price of your bonds or change the purchasing power of your bonds. So that's why I always tell people, restrict yourself to the 3 to 5 year bonds, because this is a lesson in duration risk. Nobody likes to listen. They like to come back to me and give me speeches about other people, but I'm showing you this is what happens when you take too much duration risk and you don't like to listen. But anyway, that is an example there. Now, let's go into what they're talking about here with zombie companies and why that's important. Well, you saw that you heard the definition of the terminology zombie company. It is what we call a living dead company, a company that is artificially being kept alive by access to credit. And what it simply does is that it's not generating enough profit to pay off any of its debt. It's got no operating profits to pay off its debt. It's got nothing of the sort. So this zombie company effectively has to keep borrowing just to stay alive. That is what, unfortunately, the zombie companies are doing. They have to keep borrowing. So if you're not producing enough profits, remember, as a company, you pay your interest, or you pay your interest and your debt from your profits. Right after you've sold your goods and services, you've paid your costs of goods sold. Then you start paying your administrative things like salaries. You start paying your rent for your office. You start paying your running costs. Once you've got that, there's what's called operating profits remaining. Those operating profits are now what you're going to use to start paying off. You start obviously adjusting for depreciation, but you start paying off interest payments. That's the first thing you start doing from anything that you owe. You're paying off interest payments for any loans that you have as a business. Then after that, you've got money left over that you pay with your taxes. Then after that, that's your profit that's attributable to shareholders, profit after tax. Now, these companies are failing to generate enough profit before tax, or in fact, they're failing to generate enough profit, enough operating profit to actually pay off debt. So they have to basically continue existing because their valuations are artificially being kept alive because central banks are pumping cash into the system, which is basically artificially keeping these companies alive. So I want you to think, Vernon, of a zombie company like a company on a life support machine. Okay? That is what it is. They're brain dead, but they're on life support. And until something happens that resuscitates them, eventually you cannot have. Imagine if I told you, Vernon, a fifth of the Zambian population are sitting in hospitals on life support. Is that a healthy situation?
I think this is a very common, but not just issue that actually has been brought out to light. I know small, medium enterprises. I know upcoming individuals, still of course in the business industry, that are literally in that very state. You want to call them zombies? Yeah, that is pretty much, but that what really they are. And for me, what then intrigues me is I don't know how they see or embrace the sense of growth, because I understand that the business, of course, you need to take risks. But then if you're not growing, then it's better. You're just making money to just stay alive, like you said, on life support. But then I don't know really your take. What do you think are the dangers then of just being on life support, just making sure that you're able to run costs, you're able to pay back debt, and you're still borrowing more money? Which
The
which is
problem
something
with
I
these
want
zombie
to find ourselves almost relating to the country's debt, because we keep borrowing so that we can pay back and borrow more.
countries are a little bit different because they have the powers to yeah, but there is zombie debt in Zambia even at a national level. But let me tell you the biggest problem I have with, and I'm just why I'm circling in on the zombie company problem is because they are being kept alive by banks. Okay? Banks are keeping the budgets of these companies alive, because the moment these companies cannot raise more capital, they will go into bankruptcy. And the raising of interest rates has now started to squeeze out some of these companies. So I want you to listen to what that guy said in the beginning. He said these companies have got a valuation, just the 20% of companies, listed companies in America who are zombie companies, 900 of them have got a valuation of $1.3 trillion. If companies go into bankruptcy, Vernon, that's the whole stock their wealth, poof, gone. Okay? Just imagine $1.3 trillion worth of wealth just vanishes from the US market. It's going to cause sell offs, it's going to cause meltdowns, it's going to cause problems. Okay? And then it will reverberate into the whole system. So, this is why when First Republic Bank was going down, when Silicon Valley Bank, Signature Bank, and Signature Bank went down, you didn't see any other banks like JP Morgan coming in to say we're going to deposit 30 billion into your banks to keep it alive. Why did they say First Republic? Well, because some of these banks are part of their circle, and they're trying to make sure that they protect their circle from the explosion of zombie companies, because that is what they're trying to fix right now. The banking sector has allowed these walking dead companies to rise from 2% of companies in America to 20% of companies in America. Okay, listed companies in America. That is a huge problem. Walking dead companies are what are going to cause a huge mess. Now, this problem is not just in America. You can see, he pointed it out. 1 in 5 companies also in Germany is a walking dead company being artificially kept alive by banks. Where do you think Credit Suisse also serves as well? Deutsche Bank, these banks. 1 in 6 companies in France is a walking dead company being kept alive by banks. So this problem of being kept alive by banks is actually going to cause a problem that as interest rates keep rising from the central banks who are trying to fight inflation, they're also squeezing the bank's capability to lend money continuously to these zombie companies who have to file for bankruptcy. Now you have zombie companies in America. Now in Asia, you have zombie properties. Do you know how many empty houses are currently sitting in Japan right now with mortgages attached to them, Vernon? 8 million. 8 million empty houses with mortgages attached are sitting in Japan. 50 million empty houses are sitting in China with mortgages attached to them. You have bankrupt properties across those two major economies. So you're going to have a property meltdown on that side, and then you're going to have a company meltdown on the western side. That is going to be a huge toxic mess. Now, for Zambia, the good thing is we don't have as many foreign investors actively operating in our bond markets. They've been exiting. So because the currency pain has actually been what we've been feeling. So because they're exiting, it might spare us from the brunt of the pain of them trying to exit during a zombie company and a zombie property meltdown. So that is what we're trying to, that is what we might be facing. They're not in our bond markets as much. They exit stock markets in 2018 and 2019, so we don't have as many foreign investors sitting in our local stock markets. My only advice I have to people who want to invest abroad, who want to maybe take their portfolios outside, who ask me, Munyumba, what about investing outside the country? I always say, maybe take a chill on that first. America has a bomb sitting in its bank balance sheet. China and Japan have got property bombs sitting in their balance sheets, and they need to wash those things out first before you go in there and start trying to stick your money in there, because you can easily go in there in the middle of a meltdown. That's where the risk actually comes from. You have to be very careful. And the best time is obviously when there is a recession. That's when you can now start going into their countries and start buying up assets or investing in their asset markets. But for now, you want to try and avoid playing too deeply into their space, because it is a little bit dangerous at the moment. And this is what I mean when I say, when I start to see banks like Credit Suisse having issues, I think, how many zombie companies are under their book who are keeping who they are keeping alive? Because if Credit Suisse goes down, why did the Central Bank of Switzerland react so quickly and offer a $54 billion line? Why did Signature Bank get a 30? Why are these things being rescued so quickly? Because there's a bomb underneath that if one of them goes off, it'll set the whole thing off. So you have to think of these things like a chain link of landmines, that if one of them just goes off, they're going to set the whole of them off, and then the whole grenade will go through the system. Now, will it wipe out the global financial system? No. It's not going to wipe out the whole global financial system, but what it will do is for a period of time, it'll limp it, and then it'll come back stronger, because it'll finally wash out the toxicity sitting in the system. Because that capital that's going to keeping those walking dead companies alive. Now, I hate to say this, Vernon. If you think about it like a hospital, okay, you've got limited beds and limited doctors, and you've got a patient who's just been sitting there, artificially being kept alive. That bed is being prevented from being used to save and serve other people who have a stronger chance of living. Okay, that is the situation. Okay, so it's what we call, it's in economics, Joseph Schumpeter calls it creative destruction. All right. So what you want to have is where those that are weak must be destroyed in the economy, so that they can make space or become the fertilizer for those that are new and are strong, that are going to rise up. And that is the big conversation, Vernon, about the future of the global economy. So I tell people right now, the biggest risk sitting in the global economy is the amount of companies being artificially stimulated by banks. And when banks start failing, the risk that we're starting to face is that those companies will go down with them. Well, Vernon, in Futuristic Friday today, I wanted to have a conversation about the 10 principles, the 5 principles and 5 components of a good business succession plan. So, Vernon, maybe let me throw it to you. What are your thoughts on the fact that whenever we have a successful entrepreneur in this country, we never see it go beyond, it never really extends from one generation the way the Indian Zambian population has done it, where they have the Indian Zambian population, even the historic colonial population, the Europeans have done it, where wealth has been successfully transferred from one generation to another, and it seems to expand with each generation. Why, Vernon, does the African wealth system seem to just vanish with each generation?
You know, I remember one time meeting up a friend on Lumumba Road. He's Indian by origin and actually has been in Zambia for some time now. And, you know, we're actually driving to his place. I was dropping him off in around Madras, Kamwala area. And then, you know, we were passing through government complex. On the opposite of government complex, there's a facility for Indians and whatnot. I don't know what exactly it's called. Where those guys sell vehicles and whatnot, there's a facility for Indians where they usually have, you know, events and whatnot. So then there was something going on, and I asked him saying, what is this really going on? And after that, of course, transitioned to really the aspect of, I asked him saying, okay, what is this thing that you guys do automatically? You know, you guys seemingly are just wealthy and the wealth is actually passed on to you. You know, something that he narrated to me, something very interesting was, in our culture, when you're about to leave or get married, what usually happens is you are helped, you know, you're facilitated for so that you can also grow your income and have, a stable financial situation even before you get married. So that is how you see, even when a family has a company, they'll teach you by the time you'll be getting to that aspect or that level of you wanting to marry and be independent and whatnot, you would have known how to make money and probably even give you capital and, enough resources for you to be, successful and be able to, stay by yourself and whatnot. So I think that has been the case. And I've asked this question to many musicians. I've asked them, so when you produce a hit, why isn't that consistent the next few couple of albums and songs? Why don't you continue? And possibly your children also who are interested into music, why do they not also pick up the legacy maybe and continue on the music streak maybe, or financial streak, so that you keep it on going and going? I don't really know where we miss it. And just retracting to some of the thoughts and conversations we've had on Behind the Markets, where we failed to pass it on to the previous generation, I mean to the incoming generation, so they can keep it going and going. I feel that is where we're missing it, because if they can know and understand, the prerequisites of handling a family business, I am positive that they can equally handle it even when you're not there. Unlike when you die and they're trying to, have a piece of a cake and instead, be able to bake more cakes, from whatever you have left. That way, they're just only going to squander the money and forget. So I feel we there is a serious gap of passing on, a legacy, information, knowledge, skill. And actually, it's very notably, impressive to see a father or a guardian leaving a skill to a child before they go. Probably they have an auto mechanic shop. I know one actually in a city market, where they actually, repair grinders. The father literally taught the son from scratch. And the son, whenever the father is not around, the son literally runs literally every aspect of that shop, every department. He fixes everything and there is no issue. And actually, customers have come to trust the son as well, because they know that he's just as good as the father. So it's really something very good and very impressive, though cardinal, that we haven't really grasped as Zambians to pass on to our next generation or our children generally, so they can keep it going. I feel that is literally where we're missing it, but it is something we should probably take into consideration.
So let's go through some of the things you pointed out. Why are they doing successful transition? Because in their cultural system, they're using a cultural system of succession. That is what they're utilizing. They're using a cultural system of succession from one generation to the other of economic assets, and that is what's actually helping them do this. So they pass on more than just money. The problem with Africans is when we pass on, we just like to pass on money and land and then pray that people can do well. But we don't pass on a component of things. This is why there's a 10-point plan that I'm actually going to give you all when it comes to succession planning. Okay, and these are all biblical, even. It's from the same, that these are all exactly from the Bible. They're studied from Joshua from Moses to Joshua. This is from David to Solomon. And this is when you study the Asian communities. What do they pass on from one generation to another? What are they successfully doing that is making it work? Why is each generation adding? Because even when wealth is passed from one black hand to another, it is destroyed the majority of the time. That is the problem. When we pass wealth on, we destroy it. But when they pass wealth on, they're building it. What is the difference? Because there's more than money. They're not passing wealth on. They're passing a lot on. It's a cultural transfer. So listen to how he also tied it to marriage. Listen to how he tied it to being raised. Listen to how he tied it to the fact that it's parents doing this, not the government, parents. Okay? So I'm going to just tell you 5 principles that you should uphold when doing trying to pick a business successor. And I'm also going to talk about 10 qualities of a good successor, okay? A good number 2 who you're trying to build to take over your business. Okay, so this is number 1. The first step, the first principle, there are 10 points we're going to look at, and there's 2 principles and then 10 qualities you're going to look at. For everybody who's watching today, take notes. This is one of those take notes moments you want to try and go through. But a lot of these were derived from various sources on how to do it. But also, it's also looking at where business transitions have gone right commercially, and they've also gone right culturally. So the first thing you're looking for is enlightenment. Okay? The first principle you're looking for is enlightenment. You need to be enlightened on the process of picking a successor. You need external counsel. You need wise counsel. It is a very difficult process because you're about to make a decision about the future of your enterprise based on something that you will have no power of, because you'll probably be incapacitated or dead by that time when this person is now taking over and has power over your business. So you need to be enlightened. Pray if you must. Seek the counsel of a financial advisor. Get professional, get prophetic, get together, put it together, because this is both a spiritual and an intellectual decision that you need to make. You must be at peace with it, but you must be enlightened about it. So seek enlightenment from external counsel to make this decision. It may cost you a bit, but I'm telling you this right now, nothing will cost more than seeing the business you've worked your whole life vanish before your eyes. I'm telling you, you may think it's expensive to sit down with a professional, but it's not going to be more expensive than seeing your company that you've worked your whole life, the customers you spent your whole life building, go to nothing but dust, right? The reason why these people are able to sit down and get money is because when they're picking successors, they bring in their lawyers, they bring in their financial advisors, they bring in strategists to help them. They sit down and they pray over the decision. They speak with their spouse. They really, really ponder over this decision deeply because they need to make sure they get it right, or at least they get it as close to being right. The second thing they do then, when they do find the right person, and I'm going to tell you what to hand over to the person, but when they do find the right person, is that they educate them. They see potential in this person, and then they consistently start to look at educating this person for that position. Okay. Even in the Bible, you saw Moses picked up on Joshua in the battle against the Amalekites. You saw that David was told by God that Solomon is the one that's going to build the temple. And he saw that this one is already ordained by God. So there's something in him. Steve Jobs noticed that Tim Cook was very good at Compaq. He was a brilliant salesman and a global strategist for Compaq, and he wanted to take it. He wanted to take it global. So he took Tim Cook under his wing and trained him. So there's a situation of training. So the second E you want to go through is education. You want to go through enlightenment. The next thing you want to go through is education. The third thing you want to give them is exposure. Your successor must go through a period of exposure. They must be your mentee at some point. Mentor them. Because when you mentor them, it's not just about giving them work to do. It's about making sure that they're in meetings with you. That guy you're talking about, where the son is the one fixing the things at the shop, you know where that son started? As his assistant. Okay, yeah. He was saying, hand me the spanner, hand me the wrench. That's what he was doing. And he was watching his father. When he was sitting with customers in meetings, the son was there with them, seeing how he relates to customers, knowing the names of the customers. As he's writing, he says, go and give them these, go and give them their receipts, go and give them the invoices. That is mentorship. There was a day when, and I never forgot this, I was sitting at the back of ShopRite. I was going for a meeting there. And what happened was there was this white kid who walked in school uniform, and his father was the head of a company who supplied ShopRite. And this kid was the one who was sent up into the company to go out into ShopRite to go and collect payments. He went to go and deliver an invoice to them, specifically to go and get a date for payments from them. What do you think his father was doing? Exposing him. Okay, exposure that you and many have never gotten. Okay, because he's exposing him to the people that work at the back of the people who he sells to. When that kid grows up to build that business, don't you think those people would already know him? Don't you think he's already got those connections? Those are the realities. So give them exposure. They need to go through years of it. Tim Cook was being mentored for 10 years under Steve Jobs before he ascended to that position. So you must make sure that you're working with these people over a long period of time. The next thing you want to do is also give them experience. You need to give some of the responsibilities to them in a controlled environment. Give them a task, then give them a department. Then you can start to give them a little bit of your corporate authorities inside your institution, inside your company. But over a period of time, so you've gotten enlightenment of who you should select. You've trained them a little bit. You've exposed them by allowing them to shadow you. Now you're comfortable giving them a little bit of experience to start working step by step with you. At least giving them something where they can work independently. Do some work by yourself. Now manage a department of people by yourself. Then let's see if you can help me manage the organization. Eventually, they start being your number two. They start working with you on some of the projects that you want to do. And then the most important point, the single most important point of a good succession plan, which is where a lot of African men get this wrong, is know your end point. Where in this business strategy, you're saying we've got a set of lodges. We want to grow them. So I'm going to expand these lodges through Lusaka and Copperbelt, and I'm going to stop there. Then I'm going to hand it over to my children with the goal of taking it nationwide. We're going to go to every single. Then their children are going to expand it to SADC. We're going to take this to Malawi. We're going to take it. You see, that is an intergenerational relay where, you know, when relay runners are lined up, Vernon, they all know where their end point is. They don't just get on, it's your turn. There's a point where this one takes over. So you must be able to anticipate the transition point. Now, transitions take 10 to 20 years, people. From the time you found a successor to the time this successor is ready to take over without you there. And usually it takes a period also of ascension where you now maybe go from being the CEO of the company to now just being the chairman of the board while they are the CEO. That's usually what happens. There's a period of ascension where you can offer, where you can become the wise counsel to them. So that is part of a good transition plan. Where you elevate to an ascended role where you have less responsibility. You're chair, you're on the board, but you're no longer active in your duties. But you're there, you're accessible. That is a key important part. You're no longer active, but you are accessible for wisdom. And you also you're there just in case they have to meet any of the old guard who you used to deal with, or you have to open some doors for them. That is a good transition plan that helps. And you'll see it mostly practiced, especially in the Asian community. Now, let's go through what are the things you should be handing over to these people in order to, before you hand them the keys to the kingdom and say, here's the company, take it over. There are 5 things you need to hand over. So you have been enlightened, you've educated them, you've exposed them, you've given them experience, and you've understood your endpoint and trained them for your endpoint. Biblically, there's a Bible verse where David says, Solomon is the one that will build the temple. So I will prepare everything up to that point. He actually says that. So are you preparing everything up to the point of handover? Are you creating your handover notes? Are you prepping your business for handover at a specific point? That is what you see a lot of African entrepreneurs do not do, simply because of this, Vernon. They're usually afraid that when they lose their position in the business, they'll lose their position in the family. Because we tie seniority to money. We have what we call Uncle Ndarama syndrome, where the richest person has the loudest voice in the family. And we don't really, and therefore, if the elders are being now taken care of, no, now they can just keep quiet. And every father is afraid of being relegated to that. So they hold on to their business and they don't have a cutoff point because they fear that. But if you raise your children well enough in the point of also becoming their wise counsel, that's a different point. So let's take a look at 5 things you should be handing over to your children. 1, culture, the way you do things. Now, if I'm going to talk about high performance culture, I remember I've given people the equation of high performance. You must be results oriented. You must build competencies, not papers of qualification, actual competencies of being able to do things. Not that you don't go to school and get qualifications, but competency over qualification. You must learn to start seeking responsibility. Build a culture of seeking responsibility before there is award given to it, taking initiative. Then you must also build a culture of not being comfortable with the status quo and wanting to elevate and change things, wanting to improve things from time to time. So those are some things that are going through. And yes, we'll go through some of these comments just now. There are comments actually coming up. Thank you very much to everybody. We will go through them just now. The second thing you want to do is character. Build character. Okay? Character is very important. In the Bible, whenever the transition was happening, they used to say the words, be strong and courageous. Everyone was told that. Whenever a transition was happening, when Moses handed over to Joshua, he said, be strong and courageous. When David handed over to Solomon, he said, be strong and courageous. These were 2 very good examples of handovers. The word strong and courageous. So let me tell you what strength and courage is. Courage, Vernon, is a person who takes responsibility without having to be told. Courage, Vernon, is a person who is a self-starter. Courage, Vernon, is a person who takes initiative without having to be given instruction. So that is a character that you need to build in the next generation of leaders. Are they people who can take initiative? Do they come to you, Dad, I've seen a new market. I've started this thing. Can we start implementing it in the business? Are you seeing that from your son? Before you hand them over the reins, are you seeing them taking initiative? Are you seeing them training themselves? Dad, I taught myself this new technique of how to fix cars. So I want to see if we can try and do it. I've tried to get this new customer. You didn't have to tell your son, go and get a new customer. Now they're going out there trying to get new customers for your business without you doing that. They're starting to build their own book. That is taking initiative. Okay, that's when you can start to see that this is the ones that you're ready to start handing over the reins to. They're not waiting for instructions, they're taking the initiative. The other thing you also want to look at in their character is their temperament. How do they handle loss? Don't just look at them in terms of the good time, but how do they handle stress? How do they handle loss? Do they have tenacity? Do they have resilience? If they lack resilience and tenacity, you don't want to give them that top position, because the top position of a company is packed full of stress. Everybody thinks life is easy for the boss because the boss gets paid the most. But then you don't take into consideration that the boss at 23 hours is taking phone calls to run their business. Okay, you don't understand what they're going through after hours and the things they're going through, the stress they're dealing with, the fact that on salaries days they don't have excuses, they have to pay salaries. That is a stressful position. The top of a company is stressful. You're the last to get paid, but you're the first to get blamed for everything. Okay, so do they have the ability to handle the stress of the position without trying to look at the glory of the position? Then you hand them over a cause. What do you want this to do? You know, somebody has, if we've got lodges and we're saying we want to get to a point where we're in every Southern African country. We want to be a known name. But I'm going to start by taking these lodges into Lusaka and Copperbelt. Then this one is going to take the lodges. So I got given a lodge. I took the lodge to Lusaka and Copperbelt. My children are going to take these lodges all the way to the nation, to every capital of every province, and expand through there. Then their children have got the job of taking it to every SADC country and growing our name across there. So the reality is each generation is feeding off this intergenerational vision. So have you handed them an intergenerational vision? Then and only then, Vernon, when you have built their culture, when you've built their character, and you've given them an intergenerational vision that you have built on and you're handing over to them, then and only then do you hand them the access to the resources of the company. Then and only then. And even when you're doing that, you want to start by saying, I'm going to give you reign over a department first. Before I give you the full company, I'm first going to give you a department. And you're slowly going to show me that you can grow this. Because in the Bible it says, he who is faithful with little shall be given plenty. The people who succeed do very well at their department level before they are given corporate management. Okay? The successors, whether it's Jeff Bezos, who handed over to Jassy because he handled Amazon Web Services very well. Amazon Web Services was the fastest growing part of that business. Before it was Tim Cook, who was handling global expansion very well. So you often find, even in these family businesses, the children are given a department first, and they're made to grow that department first before they're given free reign over the company. So that is what they have to try and do. And then finally, when you're now handing over your business, fully, you then hand them over the connections. You've mentored them. You've showed them. Now you're telling them, okay, these are my management team. Here are my systems. Let me show you these people. I'm going to take you to meetings with people that I know. That is a 10-point succession plan for your business. The 5 principles and the 5 components. This is your tick sheet. If you have a business and you're worried that your children may not be able to take care of it, take them through this process, okay? Step by step. This is what a lot of us miss, but it takes a lot of humility to actually understand this. Now, 10 very quick components, but first let's go through some of our comments very quickly before I give you the 10 features of a good successor. 10 very good components. Some of the comments that we've seen here. Good morning, Priscilla. Good morning, Pasmo. We've seen a conversation here from Blackchain Joe. Good morning. I was on radio, but now here. Thought Munyumba had some presentation to show us. Happy Friday, no party after party. Happy days to you, my brother. What will also good morning to everyone. Luminda was actually joining us as well. Sandstone. Priscilla is saying, I wish this program could also be brought. Let me just put this here. She's saying, I wish this program could be broadcasted in our local languages. We will work on that one day when we start putting intergenerational seminars together. Because succession should be something that's also done in seminars. Because yes, even at local businesses. President Hichilema was being interviewed once about how he built his wealth culture. And he said he got a lot of his business acumen from rearing cattle as a child. He said that business of rearing cattle as a child taught him how to operate a business. And that culture continued with him into who he was as an entrepreneur later. This was back in 2014 when he was a candidate and he was talking about his story about how he built his business, or how he first got started in the business world, or how he actually started building his wealth. So very quickly, Vernon, I'm going to hand over 10 qualities given to us by Patrick Bet-David of a good number two. Okay? Because a good number two is the natural person to ascend and offer continuity. But first thing I just want to say, Vernon, about why Asians seem to handle succession better than Africans is because our view of children is different. Asians view children for continuity. There's something the child must continue. Africans view children as an accomplishment. Okay? That is the problem. We either view them as a retirement plan, who we hope get rich to take care of us, or an accomplishment so we can show the world that we're virile, sterile, and we're virile and we can have children. Okay, that is one of the biggest problems that we face, our perception of children. So, in order to have good continuity, you need to be able to pick a good number two. So, here are some things you want for a good number two. Number one, they're very comfortable being number two, and they're not trying to usurp you as number one because they have to go through a period. If you've got somebody who's constantly trying to dethrone you, you're not going to be comfortable exposing. You're not going to be comfortable mentoring them. You're not going to be comfortable giving them duties. You're constantly going to keep one eye on them. So you have to look at those who are comfortable at being number two, because then you can now start to impart onto them. They never publicly undermine number one. Okay, that is also the next thing they do. They've got very good emotional intelligence. When you are angry, they know how to handle you. When people are angry, they know how to handle them. Number twos, because they have to handle a lot of people, tend to have very good emotional intelligence, and they know how to manage the emotions of people. They not only buy into the vision of the company, this is number four, they not only buy into the vision of the company, but they buy into the vision of the leader. Okay? So they buy into the leader, not just the vision. They buy into the vision of the company, but they buy into the leader. They are all in on this person. They've understood and they believe in this person. Number five, they don't expect perfection from number one. They understand that they are flawed, but they still don't bring you down just because you're not perfect. Number six, they are highly competent with the operations of the business, so that number one can handle the corporate affairs instead of handling. So number one can handle the corporate affairs instead of trying to handle the day-to-day operations. Number two must be competent. So let's say number two here is running the radio station. That's the programs manager. That's the person handling the content. That's the person handling production. They're very competent with that, so that number one can handle public affairs, branding, that corporate direction, vision. That's what they should be handling. Okay, policy issues and not trying to handle activities. Number seven, they are reliable and accessible, because number one needs to be able to bounce ideas off them. When number one is bouncing ideas off of you, guess what they're doing? They're giving you their wisdom. They're feeding you their thinking process. So when you are number one, you know what to get as well. Okay, that's what you're also realizing as a person. The other thing you're looking at is they're also a great idea sounding board. That's what I was also pointing out there. Number nine, they protect number one while winning the hearts of the team. So sometimes the team can be angry with number one, but number two is there to say, look, I know it's tough, but let's keep together. So the team have got a love for number two and number one, but they don't undermine number one. Why? So that when number two ascends to number one, guess what happens? The people still love number two. Okay, because even when the people were angry with Moses biblically, they were never angry with Joshua. They were very strong followers of Joshua, even to the point when he took over. They said, wherever you go, we shall go. And finally, they have a sense of urgency. When given a task, they always make sure they execute it as quickly as possible, and they take things in an urgent fashion. When something is put on the table, they don't drag their feet about it. Those are 10 qualities you need to look for in a good successor. So when you're getting enlightened, also, this is your checklist. Go through your successors. What are the qualities of a good successor, so that you are able to hand over to them very well, that they may continue your mission fruitfully and excellently. So when building a good succession plan, just go through the 5 components, the 5 principles, 5 components, and the 10 qualities of a successor. This process is not overnight. It takes 10 to 20 years to fully do. Okay, as long as it took you to build your business, that's how long it's going to take you to hand it over to the right person. Okay, that's just the truth. Okay, however long it took you to build that customer base, that's how long you should spend pouring yourself into the next person, so that they can now take it to the next stage, and that's how you get the smooth transition. But trying to instantaneously find the right successor, all the best, my brother. That's how businesses go to die. So this is why the Indian business model, or the Chinese, or even the European old colonial business model of having the son or daughter work in the business for a period of time, that business model is actually the reason why their businesses last longer and they're intergenerational. And African ones die with the person who built them. That's what we need to change if we want to do the proper transfer of wealth between generations. Now, this can be mimicked at a business level, this can be mimicked at a church level, anything. They are procedures. Now, this requires that the next generation are not impatient. That's what it requires. The next generation must be patient to this process, because it takes somebody imparting their wisdom onto you, exposing you to their systems, and slowly giving you experience for you to be able to smoothly step into an institution properly. That's where I leave that there. But I don't know if you have any last thoughts before we branch off today and going on to the next week.
No. Just would you happen to at least give us a heads up of what we're looking at next week? I'm sure people will be rather excited to know what to look out for.
Next week we will be talking a lot more about rich habits. I have seen that as a society we're running away from wealth habits. We think we can do things without trying to build wealth habits. And I wanted to go through some of the things that the people who actually have built wealth, and the people who what are they practicing? What are the things we should be looking at? What are the things the top 1% in many countries do according to financial advisors, their surveys that they show you? What do they do by age? And I'm going to take you through that on Tuesday. So I want to talk about wealth habits, because if we want to start building a wealthy society, we must start building wealth character and wealth culture before we must build wealth character, culture, and a cause before we build wealthy cash. There's things that we have to invest in ourselves. So wealth habits are very important. And also mainly I want to talk about the transfer of wealth between the youth. So that is going to be the proper behaviors that we're supposed to be exhibiting in our habits. That is next week's conversations.
All right. Thank you so much. We'll be looking forward to that. Thank you for your time.
And it is Financial Literacy Week. It is Financial Literacy
Week.
Week.
Yes, absolutely. Financial Literacy Week. Looking forward to it as well.
All right, cheers, man.